Hello everyone. It's 12:30 on a Thursday. You know what that means. It's time for our Ounce of Prevention chat. I am Dr. Stephanie Fine and I'm so happy to be with you here today. And today we are talking about what's bacteria got to do with it. A lot. A lot we don't know, actually. That's the bottom line, but there are things we do know, and that's what we're going to talk about. So I'm going to define pre and probiotics. We're going to talk about when and if you need them, and then some really interesting stuff on obesity, metabolism, and these bacteria. That's the kind of fun stuff. So first, what is a pre and probiotic? So, remember that you get a blog every Thursday if you sign up on stephaniefinemd.com. You can get your Ounce of Prevention right to your inbox. And in there's a blog. And this is the topic of today's blog. There are a couple stories in there, but we're going to touch on, go a little deeper into a few other things. And the first thing is the definition of a pre and probiotic. So prebiotic, I promise you it's a new word. They didn't used to have it. But it's the undigested fiber. So it's undigestible fiber that our bodies were not designed to digest. But you know who does digest it? Bacteria. So it's bacteria food. Prebiotic is bacterial food. And all that are fibers that we can't digest. Places to find those are in your food. That's the best place to find it and the best place to get it. That's actually going to be the bottom line of all this, is the best place to get what you need for your body is through whole foods. We do a lot of, the medical establishment does a lot of research and looking for things, and we can isolate things and figure stuff out, but it's always going to be better long term if you can manage it with the whole food, the natural way of getting it. Because what we find is, yes, vitamin C is important, but it's better if you have, the skin of this because it has another mineral in there. It's incredible what nature has evolved to give us. It's really fantastic. So anyway, a prebiotic is that. Now, I mentioned that Metamucil is a prebiotic, which again, this is how I know it was a new word because I did not know. So Metamucil is just psyllium husk. And psyllium husk is the covering of psyllium, and we cannot digest it, but it does great things for us. The main thing of which it feeds good bacteria in our gut. And this is another part, if you have symptoms, adding prebiotic in the form of psyllium husk, which can be Metamucil, which you can find in any drugstore or supermarket, or like Trader Joe's has psyllium husk, literally it's psyllium husk, that would work too. If you have symptoms, then that's a good place to add. But if you don't have symptoms, and symptoms would be things like constipation, too much fiber, meaning if you don't have symptoms and you start taking Metamucil, then you could potentially have bloating. You could potentially have other symptoms, because too much fiber can cause bloating because the bacteria are eating too much and they're giving gas, and there you are. So the point about this is listening to your body. So what your body needs is going to be really important, and how we're listening to that is how it feels, how it's functioning. If your your GI tract is not functioning well, diarrhea, pain, terrible constipation, these sorts of things, then you need to be evaluated for sure. See your healthcare provider about that. And then there are these little subtle things you can do that may make huge changes to how you're feeling. And those are all really worth it. And having a whole food-based diet is a very good place to start. But there's certainly nuances that a healthcare provider could help you with there, like elimination diets and FODMAP diets, but we're right now going to talk about probiotics. So probiotics, we talked about prebiotics. Probiotics are good bacteria. That's what probiotics are. And it turns out we have billions and billions and billions of bacteria, yeast, fungi, viruses that live permanently. Well, not permanently. Not each one, but the microbiome is permanent in our GI tract. And it turns out it's super important that we need it. We live together and we help each other. So when your gut flora is really healthy, then the mucus lining works. There's no inflammation. There's no deficiency in the permeability of the intestine. It functions how it's supposed to. And you feel well and you're functioning fine. That's how we know. So that's a good way. Some people talk about probiotics, about taking them, and you absolutely can. There's pills, and there's been studies that show that pills do change the flora. And depending on which pill, it could be for a benefit, right? But the issue with pills is that they're only a certain number of strains. Even if they have a bunch of them, they're not as much as if you had fermented food. And so that's the other piece I wanted to talk about in terms of probiotics. There's the pill form, but then there's fermented food. And again, I'm always going to recommend, if it's needed, that you get whatever you need from food directly. And fermented food is things like yogurt, kefir, sauerkraut, kimchi, kombucha. There's lots of different ones. Now, the issue is that they have to be fermented and non-pasteurized. Pasteurization is heat and kills bacteria, which is the whole reason we're eating the fermented food. So if you're going into a grocery store, you need to go to the refrigerated section, because anything not in the refrigerated section is going to have been pasteurized. It needs to be refrigerated. And things like pickles are often in vinegar. They are then not fermented. So you're looking for a lactic acid fermentation process, and that is what gives you the probiotics. So that will give you the bacteria that you are looking for. And so that's it. So you don't want a vinegar-based fermentation process, or pickling process is what that's called. But fermentation can pickle things, but in this way that gives you the probiotic that you're looking for, the bacteria that you're looking for. So, and I put a link in my blog, but I'm going to tell you here, Fermenting Fairy, such a cute name, is someone I trust who makes delicious and really healing foods in this way. They're fermented foods. And she actually has some lemonades, which is a great way to get kids to have it too if the kids are having issues. That you can go to fermentingfairy.com. So she has some good stuff. And let's see, I wanted to talk to you then about, so that's pre and probiotics. I wanted to talk to you about, and I did, about only if you have symptoms, is that something that you want to necessarily look into? Certainly, having some fermented foods every day or as part of your diet regularly is brilliant, right? That is always going to be something that works. You eat the fermented food, you're colonizing, making sure everything's staying happy and good in there. So fermented foods are something that you can have regardless if you have symptoms or not. Taking a probiotic pill, I'm like on the fence in terms of, the good news is there's not a lot of negative that happen with that, but I don't know that you need to spend the money there unless you have symptoms that are helped by it. Then of course, then I know it's worth it. So again, fermented foods would be the way to go that I would recommend. The last part that I wanted to talk about, to me, is such an interesting part. Oh my goodness. This idea of obesity being related to the gut flora. Okay. Fascinating. There's actually bunches of things that people are looking at. They're talking about it being the second brain because the communication is really important in the gut. And it makes sense. You know how babies put things in their mouths? That's what happens, is we're putting and digesting things. We're interpreting our environment this way. And some of the things in our environment aren't good. And when we take them in, processed foods, lots of sugar, that type of thing, our body's communicating with the rest of our systems. And you are what you eat. You know what I mean? That kind of idea. So the interesting thing about obesity and the gut flora is that there is a difference in the gut flora in thin people and in people who are overweight or obese. I mean, I find that fascinating. Now, what we don't know is which comes first. I imagine it's the eating habits first that change the flora that then support being overweight. I don't know that for a fact, but I suspect that that's the way it goes. And so with this knowledge, people are always looking for how can we get thin quickly. And one of the things they're looking at is fecal transplantation. So fecal transplantation is literally a poop transplantation. I know, it's not pretty. They do everything that they can to, it's a procedure. But the reason that's even a viable idea is because there's lots of live bacteria in your poop, which is why we wash our hands after, because the stuff that comes out isn't pure good, right? You have to wash your hands after you go to the bathroom. But they've actually done, the reason they're doing fecal transplantation is because there's a really terrible bacterial infection that people can get that holds on to some people in a terrible way where they can't stop diarrhea. It's called C. diff. And if you transplant from someone who does not have it and has healthy gut flora, it almost instantly, very soon, fixes the problem. They've had diarrhea for weeks and weeks and weeks, months, some of them. They get this fecal transplant over. It is a miracle for these people. So, of course, when it happens, they look at other things, right? And there was one case documented where there was a thin person with the C. diff problem. She got the bacteria from a family member who was obese, and she gained weight. The diarrhea stopped, but she started gaining weight. It's very interesting. The reason why that's even interesting is because they actually have mouse studies that support that idea. So, of course, people are thinking, oh my goodness, I just find my thin friend, and there we go. We are not anywhere close to that. And the really big issue too is that our gut flora changes every 3 days. Like depending on what you eat, you can change your gut flora quickly. So going through all that and then having to do it again, that's the question is how long does it last, and would it really? And one of the studies I talked about is that taking the probiotics did change people's weight, but on the order of 1 to 2 pounds in 12 weeks. 12 weeks, that's a lot of days. So that's months. And I don't know that people would think that was worth it to take the pills for 1 pound, right? So, and then you'd have to keep taking it, because when they stop taking it, then they gain back the weight. So it doesn't look like changing the gut flora with certain pills is the answer right now, but it is a very interesting topic. And so we'll see what happens. I know, because I've seen the studies, that metabolic changes, so insulin sensitivity, can be changed by changing the gut flora. But I imagine you can end up doing that with sustained behavioral changes. And we'll see. But I know, because I've seen it, that people change their pre-diabetes to, as soon as they lose weight, they don't have that anymore. Even people who newly diabetic, you lose weight and by changing your eating, and you don't have it anymore. So I have a sense that it's still a lifestyle thing. I don't think we're gonna get out of the fact that we have to change our habits, but we'll get closer and closer to how exactly it happens. And that's fascinating. All right, I could talk forever about this. I'm going to stop. But I hope that you are having a fantastic day. If this stuff is interesting to you, pass it along. Send this to all your friends. Share, share, share. It's so interesting to talk about fecal transplantation. And I will be back here next week. Have a wonderful day, a wonderful week, and share this video. Bye.